ladies and gentlemen, sometimes the greatest proof of love isn't found in what someone says, but in the silence that follows when they disappear. Because when a man truly loves you, he doesn't always stay. Sometimes he vanishes to face the parts of himself that can't yet meet the depth of what he feels for you. That silence you're trying to decode, it's not rejection, it's transformation. He's not walking away from love. He's walking toward the version of himself that can finally deserve it. If he truly loves you, he'll disappear. And that sounds confusing, doesn't it? Because love in our minds is supposed to be about closeness, connection, consistency, not silence, not absence, not walking away. But sometimes love isn't about being near. Sometimes it's about stepping back. It's about a man realizing that the only way to love you right is to first learn how to love himself better. And when a man truly feels something real for you, something that goes beyond lust or ego or the thrill of the chase, he begins to see his own reflection in your eyes. He sees his fears, his insecurities, his unhealed parts staring right back at him. And that's where most men stumble, because love, real love, doesn't just make you feel good. It exposes you. It forces you to confront everything within you that's not ready for it. So sometimes, instead of staying, he disappears. Not because he doesn't care, but because what he feels is too heavy for the version of himself he currently is. And you see, when a man doesn't truly care, he has no reason to disappear. He'll stay, play games, keep you around as an option, because it costs him nothing. But when it's real, when something about you wakes him up, when your presence challenges him to be better, that's when the fear sets in, the fear of failing you, the fear of being seen too deeply, the fear of losing control. And that's when you'll see him pull away. Not because he wants to let you go, but because part of him knows that to stay, he has to rise. And it's not weakness, it's awareness. Some men disappear not out of avoidance, but out of recognition, a recognition that what they feel is bigger than what they're ready for. And if you try to chase him during that time, if you try to drag him back before he's faced himself, all you'll get is a man pretending to be ready when he's not. You'll get inconsistency, confusion, emotional hot, and cold energy that drains your spirit. But if he truly loves you, his silence isn't rejection, it's preparation. And when a man disappears because he truly cares, he's not off seeking another distraction. He's in a quiet war with himself. He's learning why commitment scares him. He's realizing that love isn't about possession, it's about partnership. He's understanding that to be with you, to truly show up for you, he can't carry his old wounds into something new. So he retreats, he rebuilds, he reflects. And here's where your power comes in. When he disappears, your instinct might be to chase, to fill the void, to make sense of the silence. But love that's real doesn't grow through control. It grows through space. When you stay grounded in your worth, when you continue living your life, glowing in your energy, you show him what emotional security looks like. You show him that his disappearance won't dismantle your world, that you are not waiting, but evolving. And men fall in love not just with beauty or chemistry, but with the peace a woman carries within herself. When you don't beg him to come back, when you don't try to prove your value through chasing, you give him the space to realize what he had. That's when love transforms from something that scared him to something that calls him home. And the truth is, most men have never been taught what real love feels like. They've been taught attraction, desire, the pursuit, but not stillness, not accountability, not the maturity that love requires. So when they meet a woman who awakens them emotionally, their first instinct isn't always to stay. It's to retreat, to process what just hit them. And the best thing you can do in that moment is to let him. Because if his love is real, he won't stay gone forever. And when love is real, absence isn't the end. It's the test. It's the moment where both people are forced to choose between fear and growth. His disappearance isn't just about him. It's also about you. It's asking you, can you trust that what's meant for you doesn't need to be chased? It's asking him, can you face your demons so you can show up for something real? Love that lasts doesn't come from running away from those questions. It comes from answering them. And if he truly loves you, he won't stay comfortable in distance for long, because love creates restlessness in separation. It creates a quiet ache that no distraction can numb. It reminds him of who he was when he was with you, calm, inspired, alive. That's when he starts to realize that disappearing didn't make the feelings go away. It made them louder. It made them more certain. It made him understand that the only way forward is to grow into the man capable of standing beside you without fear. And so if he disappears, don't panic. Don't label it rejection or punishment. Let it be what it is: space for him to evolve, space for you to deepen your own self-respect, space for the kind of alignment that real love requires. Because the truth is, when someone truly loves you, their absence doesn't destroy the connection. It refines it. And he might not say it, but his silence is filled with reflection. He's thinking about how he spoke, how he acted, where his ego got in the way. He's realizing that you weren't asking for perfection, just presence. And that's something he can't fake anymore. Because real love doesn't want performance. It wants truth. And when he's ready, when he's done running from the love that scared him, he'll come back differently. Not with empty promises, but with energy that matches yours. Not because you waited, but because you walked forward. Because your peace reminded him what real love should feel like: safe, honest, powerful. And so when he disappears, don't question your worth, question his readiness, and then focus on what you can control: your glow, your purpose, your growth. Because love isn't proven in constant contact. It's proven in who returns when the silence is over and how they show up when they do. And sometimes the most profound act of love isn't staying, it's stepping away long enough to become the person who can. And while he's gone, life has a way of testing both hearts. The distance becomes a mirror. It shows you where you once tied your peace to his presence, and it shows him where he once relied on your energy to feel worthy. That's what real love does. It shines a light on everything that needs healing, not to punish, but to prepare. Because if he truly loves you, his disappearance isn't an escape, it's an awakening. It's that moment when love stops being a fantasy and starts becoming a responsibility. And he starts to realize that love isn't about being wanted. It's about being ready. Ready to listen instead of react. Ready to give instead of control. Ready to be honest even when it's uncomfortable. And he begins to see that his distance is costing him something: irreplaceable connection. The kind of connection that doesn't just excite the body, but steadies the soul. The kind of connection he's not going to find in the noise of temporary comfort. And while he's gone, he feels the absence differently. It doesn't hit him all at once. It comes in waves. It's when he hears something funny and instinctively thinks of you. It's when he has a small victory and wants to share it, but realizes you're not there. It's when he scrolls through old messages, searching for the version of himself that felt alive when he was with you. And he begins to understand that what he ran from wasn't pressure, it was growth. You challenged him in ways that scared him because you made him want to become someone better. And there's a point where every man realizes that disappearing doesn't erase emotion, it only delays accountability. He can distract himself for a while, fill his days with noise, maybe even find someone new to numb the emptiness. But true connection leaves fingerprints on the heart, and no matter how far he goes, he'll find that those prints remain. Because love that's real isn't something you can replace, it's something you must rise to meet. And you see, when he truly loves you, his mind can wander, but his soul stays tethered. That's the part of love no one teaches us about, the silent pull that remains after the goodbye. He'll start to see that his disappearance wasn't freedom, it was avoidance. Avoidance of the work, of the vulnerability, of the mirror you held up to him. And as time passes, that avoidance starts to feel like loss, because he'll realize that distance doesn't protect him from pain, it amplifies it. And while he's trying to forget, you're transforming. You're learning that love doesn't mean waiting. It means understanding your value doesn't diminish when someone walks away. You start to see that your worth isn't tied to who chooses you, but how you choose yourself. And as you grow, your energy shifts. You no longer crave closure. You no longer rehearse conversations in your mind. You start to live again fully, confidently, peacefully. And that shift doesn't just change your life, it changes the entire dynamic. And because a man who truly loves you feels that shift, even from miles away, he senses it. He can feel when your energy no longer reaches for him. When the woman who once tried to fix, prove, or explain now simply exists, free, fulfilled, untouchable. That's when reality hits him hardest. He begins to realize that his disappearance didn't just give him space, it gave you power. The kind of power that can't be faked or taken back. And that's when his reflection deepens. He starts asking questions he never asked before. Why did he run when things got real? Why did he confuse vulnerability with weakness? Why did he think disappearing would make the feelings fade instead of sharpen them? Those questions don't come from guilt, they come from love. Because when a man truly loves you, his heart can't find peace in absence. It keeps whispering your name in moments of silence, reminding him that love doesn't disappear just because he did. And in time, that silence becomes his teacher. He learns that love doesn't need perfection, it needs presence. It needs consistency, not grand gestures. It needs effort, not excuses. And he begins to realize that the love he felt for you wasn't something he could just get over. It was something he had to grow into. That realization changes everything, because now he's not running from love, he's preparing to be worthy of it. And while he's doing that, you're no longer standing still, you're building, expanding, becoming the version of yourself that no longer needs someone to complete her. You understand that love is beautiful, but peace is sacred. You start to see that the right person won't make you question your value, they'll mirror it. And because you've stopped chasing, you've created space for something real, whether that's his return as a changed man or someone new who meets you where you are now. And if his love is genuine, he'll come back different. You won't have to decode mixed signals or chase clarity. He'll show it through his presence, his consistency, his willingness to do the work. He'll come back not because he misses the comfort, but because he's learned the lesson. He'll have realized that disappearing didn't heal him. It humbled him. It made him understand that love without courage is just attraction, and attraction fades, but courage keeps love alive. But here's what's even more powerful sometimes. His disappearance is not meant to end in reunion. Sometimes the man who truly loves you disappears not to find his way back to you, but to help you find your way back to yourself. His love becomes the spark that ignites your transformation, the reason you set boundaries, the reason you learn the difference between connection and attachment. His absence becomes the very thing that teaches you presence with yourself. And he might remember the sound of your laughter long after you've stopped thinking about him. He might carry the memory of your patience, your kindness, your strength as a reminder of what love looks like when it's real. And that memory will follow him, shaping how he shows up for love in the future, whether with you or someone else, because that's what real love does. It doesn't always stay, but it always leaves both people changed. And if he truly loves you, his disappearance won't be about abandonment, it will be about evolution. He'll disappear to face his shadows, to learn what kind of man he wants to be, to confront the parts of himself that sabotaged something good. And as painful as that space might be, it's necessary, because love without growth becomes stagnation. And when someone's heart is genuinely connected to yours, their journey away isn't about running from you. It's about learning how to finally be worthy of standing beside you. And you may not see that growth happen. You may never hear the apologies that form in his mind. But know this, if the love was real, it changed him just as it changed you. Every silence, every unanswered question, every lonely night had a purpose. It wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Preparation for two people to meet again as stronger, fuller versions of themselves, or to walk separate paths carrying the lessons that love carved into their souls. And because when love is real, it never truly disappears. It transforms, it becomes wisdom, gratitude, strength. It becomes the quiet voice that reminds you that you are capable of loving deeply and surviving loss. That your heart can break open and still beat stronger. And even if he never returns, the love that made him disappear becomes the very thing that brings you back home to yourself. And then as time moves forward, life begins to show you the deeper truth of what that disappearance really meant. You start to see that his silence wasn't just an ending, it was an initiation. It was a moment designed to wake both of you up to what love actually asks of you. Because real love isn't just a feeling you fall into, it's a mirror that forces you to rise. And that mirror doesn't flatter, it reveals. It shows him his fears and it shows you your strength. And as he's out there trying to find peace in distraction, he starts to realize something no one tells you about disappearing, that the act of running away never quiets what's real. You can leave a person, but you can't escape the lesson they brought into your life. He might travel, he might keep himself busy, he might even convince himself that he's moved on. But late at night, when the noise fades, he feels it. That ache that reminds him he didn't just walk away from someone, he walked away from growth. And every man who has ever truly loved and disappeared comes to this point. It's the moment when pride fades and clarity begins. He starts to understand that love isn't about finding perfection, it's about choosing depth. And when he remembers how your energy felt, calm yet challenging, gentle yet powerful, he realizes that what he left behind wasn't comfort, it was alignment. The kind of alignment that pushes a person to evolve. And there's a shift that happens in that realization. At first, he might feel guilt, then regret. But eventually, he feels respect. Respect for what you brought into his life, for how you loved him without trying to control him, for how you didn't chase him when he disappeared. Because he knows that kind of strength doesn't come from indifference. It comes from self-worth. And that's when it hits him. Your calmness during his absence wasn't detachment, it was power. And he begins to understand that real love isn't about holding on tightly, it's about holding yourself strongly. That's the lesson his disappearance taught him through you. That love demands space, and space demands faith. And while he thought he was leaving to figure things out, what he actually did was create the silence he needed to hear the truth of his own heart. That truth whispers that love doesn't disappear because of distance. It disappears when one or both people stop growing. And so he starts to reflect on what he really wants, not the temporary thrill of being desired, not the ego rush of being chased, but the steady peace of being understood. He realizes that to have that kind of love again, he must stop running from himself. That's where transformation begins, when a man stops looking for validation and starts seeking evolution, because deep down, love doesn't scare him, his own vulnerability does. But through that disappearance, he learns that running from vulnerability is the same as running from intimacy. And as for you, you've been learning too. You've discovered that silence doesn't always mean loss. Sometimes it means liberation. You've learned that you don't need someone to come back for closure, because peace isn't something they give you, it's something you choose. You begin to notice how your life expands without needing anyone's permission. You laugh louder, you walk taller, you feel lighter, you begin to attract people, experiences, and opportunities that match the new energy you've grown into. And ironically, that's when he starts to feel the shift even more. And because when a man truly loves you, he can sense when your energy no longer needs him. That realization doesn't breed jealousy, it breeds awakening. He begins to see the difference between being loved and being valued. He remembers how you looked at him, not as a project to fix, but as a person capable of more. That kind of reflection lingers. It lives in the back of his mind, reminding him that the love he felt wasn't a phase, it was a mirror to his potential. And while he's learning, he starts to understand that disappearing didn't make him lose control. It revealed how much he never had it. Because love isn't about control, it's about courage. Courage to stay when things feel uncertain. Courage to be honest when the ego wants to hide. Courage to admit, I need to grow before I can give. And that's the moment he starts to become a different kind of man, not because someone told him to, but because the silence forced him to face himself. And he begins to remember the way your presence brought him clarity, the way your energy steadied his chaos. The way your strength didn't come from trying to impress, but from simply knowing your worth. And he starts to understand something he couldn't before. That love like that doesn't come around often. And when it does, it demands growth. So he starts working on himself quietly, piece by piece. The man who once disappeared begins to rebuild the foundation of who he is, not for attention, but for alignment. And during that time, the world tests you too. Old patterns might try to resurface. Doubt might whisper that maybe love was just an illusion. But each time you choose to trust your own worth, each time you choose to focus on what's in front of you rather than what's missing, you grow stronger. You stop needing answers from someone else because you've learned to find truth within yourself. And in that strength, you find freedom. And that freedom is magnetic. It radiates without effort. And that's when people start to notice something about you. Your glow doesn't come from someone loving you. It comes from you loving yourself. That's the energy that makes the man who disappeared start questioning everything. Because the version of you that he left behind is not the same person he would meet now. You've evolved. You've become the embodiment of what he always saw glimpses of peace in motion. And that's when the universe starts its quiet alignment. He begins to reappear, not in grand gestures, but in reflection, in awareness, in change. Whether that means reaching out or simply carrying your influence forward in his life, he shows signs of growth. Because love that's real doesn't fade with time. It matures, it takes on a deeper form, one built not on fantasy, but on truth, and he might come back one day, not to repeat the past, but to show you the man he's become. Or maybe he never returns, and instead life rewards you with something even greater. A connection that meets your evolved self fully, without fear or hesitation. Either way, you both win, because love that's real never goes to waste. It either returns refined or teaches you everything you needed to know to recognize the love that's next. And in the end, his disappearance becomes a sacred pause, one that rewrote both of your stories. He learned that absence doesn't protect him from pain, and you learned that love doesn't require waiting. Together, you both discovered that distance can either destroy connection or deepen it, and which one it becomes depends on who you become during the silence. And somewhere in that journey, he begins to see what love really asks for: accountability, humility, growth. He realizes that disappearing wasn't the mistake, staying gone would be. Because love that's real always calls you to rise, not retreat. It doesn't beg for attention, it invites transformation. And so when he looks back, he understands something profound, that the woman who didn't chase him was the same one who taught him what it means to show up fully. That the silence he once created became the space where he finally met himself. And that disappearance, painful as it was, wasn't the end of love. It was the beginning of becoming someone who could finally give it the way it deserves to be given. And as that transformation continues, life starts revealing the quiet poetry of it all. Because what once felt like loss now begins to look like alignment. Every moment that once stung now starts to make sense. His disappearance, as painful as it was, becomes the very thing that shaped the next chapter of both your lives. Sometimes, love doesn't arrive to stay, it arrives to awaken. It shakes you both out of who you were pretending to be and calls you closer to who you're meant to become. And he begins to feel that awakening too, even if he never says it out loud. There's a weight to love that lingers, a gravity that doesn't fade no matter how far he goes. He feels it when he catches himself comparing every new connection to what you shared. He feels it when he realizes that what he misses isn't the comfort of being wanted, but the clarity of being seen. Because real love doesn't just make you feel something. It changes the way you see everything. And he starts to understand that what he once called space was really fear. The fear of not being enough, of being truly known, of being vulnerable enough to stay when it would have been easier to run. And as time softens him, he starts to see that love was never the threat. It was the mirror. It showed him everything within himself that still needed healing. That's why he disappeared. Not because he stopped caring, but because caring demanded a version of him he hadn't yet become. And the world will test him. It always does. He'll meet people who want his attention but not his depth, who excite him but never challenge him. And with each encounter, he'll begin to realize what was different about the connection he left behind. It wasn't about intensity. It was about meaning. It was about being with someone who made him want to show up as more than his fears. That's when it dawns on him that love isn't about finding someone who completes you. It's about finding someone who makes you curious about your own potential. And as that realization settles, something inside him begins to shift. The silence he once used to escape becomes the very thing that calls him home. He starts to crave honesty, not games, depth, not distraction. He begins to look for peace, not just pleasure. And that's when the transformation becomes real, when he no longer runs from what scared him, but steps toward it with humility. Because that's what true love does. It strips away the layers of ego and teaches you that connection isn't about control, it's about courage. And while his journey unfolds, yours has become something entirely different. You've reached a point where peace no longer feels like waiting. It feels like power. You've stopped rehearsing what ifs and started embracing what's next. You've realized that your strength was never proven by holding on, but by letting go with grace. And in that grace, something inside you has unlocked, a deeper trust in life, in timing, in yourself. And you start to understand that love is not a reward for patience. It's a reflection of energy. When you stand in your worth, love finds you differently. It no longer tests your boundaries, it respects them. It no longer drains your energy, it amplifies it. You attract not from need, but from wholeness. And that shift doesn't just change how others love you, it changes how you love yourself. And somewhere along his path, he begins to feel that energy again. Maybe it's through a song, a memory, a random moment of stillness. but it hits him. The realization that your connection wasn't meant to be controlled or owned, but understood. It wasn't about possession, it was about perspective. He begins to see how your strength taught him what emotional maturity actually looks like: calmness without detachment, compassion without self-sacrifice, love without losing identity. And that understanding humbles him, because when a man truly loves, he knows when he's standing in the presence of something rare. He knows that what he disappeared from wasn't ordinary. And that's when life begins to present him with a choice to stay the same and keep running, or grow and face the truth that real love doesn't wait for readiness, it demands it. And so he starts doing the work quietly. No one sees it happening, but it's there. He begins to unlearn the patterns that made him retreat. He starts to have hard conversations with himself about why he feared intimacy. He confronts the moments where pride got in the way of vulnerability. And through that reflection, he begins to rebuild the bridge between who he was and who he wants to become. And every man who has ever truly loved goes through this internal battle, the tension between ego and emotion, fear and faith. But real love has a way of breaking through the noise. It calls him toward authenticity. It whispers that the kind of connection he ran from is exactly the kind that could have healed him. And once he hears that whisper, he can't unhear it. It follows him through every lesson, every decision, every quiet night where he realizes that love was never the problem, avoidance was. And meanwhile, you're not waiting on the sidelines. You've stepped into your purpose, into your light, into your peace. You've learned that silence doesn't mean weakness. It means knowing when not to speak. You've discovered that love can exist without attachment. And that letting someone go doesn't mean you've lost them. It means you've honored both your journeys. You start to attract people who match that energy, grounded, genuine, awake. And in that stillness, you become even more magnetic. And that magnetism reaches him. Because when love is real, energy doesn't lie. Even if you never speak again, something in him feels it. He can sense that you've transformed the pain into power, that you've turned heartbreak into healing. And whether or not he ever returns, he knows deep down that disappearing didn't break you. It built you. It showed you that love isn't about who stays. It's about who grows. And he may come back one day, not because he needs to, but because he chooses to. Because love that's real doesn't thrive on dependence. It thrives on choice. And if he does, you'll see it in his energy. He won't come back to fill a void. He'll come back to contribute peace. He won't come back with promises. He'll come back with actions. And if he doesn't, it won't matter, because you've learned the most important truth of all, that your value never left with him. And his disappearance was a chapter, not the story. It was the fire that burned away illusion, so both of you could see truth. He learned that love isn't meant to be escaped, it's meant to be embodied. You learned that love isn't about waiting for someone to find themselves, it's about finding yourself regardless. And in that mutual growth, love doesn't end. It evolves. And because love that's real doesn't just connect two people, it refines them. It tests, stretches, and transforms them until they're no longer the same. His silence, your strength, his reflection, your healing, all of it was part of the same divine process. The distance wasn't a punishment, it was a passage, a sacred unfolding that taught both of you that love isn't about holding on. It's about becoming whole enough to return without fear or to walk away without resentment. And through that understanding, everything shifts. He begins to live with more intention, more gratitude, more humility. You move forward with more confidence, more serenity, more light. And maybe, just maybe, when the timing is right and both souls have evolved, life brings you back together, not as who you were, but as who you became because of the distance. And then even if that never happens, you'll both carry the same truth within you, that real love doesn't vanish when people do. It lingers, it teaches, it shapes, and it stays alive in the lessons learned, in the strength gained, and in the hearts forever changed by the experience of having truly loved.